today we have a great guest with us to recognize him for his work. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to give him an award. And although we're doing this virtual, Craig, I'm going to come down to Tampa sometime in the next month. I'll take you to lunch and personally give you the award. But if you have questions for Craig, put it in the chat. We've already had about 20 questions we got for you, Craig. Again, his name is Craig Patrick. This year, Craig did 2 specific reports directly impacting persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. One is called Waiting for Help. The other is called Disabled Floridians in Crisis and the Lesson in the Power of Civic Engagement. We will include that in the chat. We'll also include it to all the registrants when we send it out so you can watch it at your leisure. And just so you know, Craig, we have over 350 people that registered. It was a great year by policymakers as it impacted persons with disabilities. Often the reason why is that the person impacted by government policy speaks to policymakers, but the word really doesn't get out there. And some speak to reporters. They have the courage to speak to reporters. And at those times, we really have an impact. Today, we take a moment to recognize one of the top investigative reporters in Florida, if not in the United States. We also get an opportunity to learn as advocates how we can be better advocates as we work with the media. Craig Patrick is Fox 13's political editor and chief investigator. He has won more than 20 Emmy Awards, and I'm sure he's going to win one for the stuff he did this last session for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Throughout his career, he's won these awards as an executive producer, an anchor, and reporter. The Emmy Awards, or Emmys, are an extensive range of awards for artistic and technical merit for the American and international television industry. His investigations focus on questionable government policy and spending. His reports have exposed illegal state tax credits, lawmakers violating their own voting rules, and Medicare schemes that bilked millions of tax dollars. Craig began his career as an anchor, reporter at television stations in Savannah and Birmingham. He obtained his bachelor's in journalism and political science from Spring Hill College in Mobile, Alabama. Craig has served on the boards of several Tampa Bay area government and community organizations, including the St. Petersburg Planning Commission, City Beautiful Commission, Pinellas Public Access Advisory Board, Pinellas Juvenile Welfare Board, and Tampa Bay Red Cross Advisory Board. I want to give Craig a moment to say a few words, and then we're going to go to questions. So I want to tell you, we appreciate you, Craig. You made a big difference getting the truth out there to policymakers, and it's made a difference, not just then, but today. So Craig, it's yours to make a few comments before we go to questions.
Well, my goodness, Alan, thank you so much for having me and for your very, very kind words. I'm extraordinarily flattered and very, very grateful for being invited here and for the accolades. But it is your work. It's the work of the 350 or more people on this phone call who spread the word, who I think are doing the real magic and getting the word out. And yes, things have stalled, I know, for a number of years, and a lot of people are in very severe need for help that they are eligible to receive and aren't getting it. The ball did move a little bit, didn't it, this year in Tallahassee? Only a little bit, and I know that there is a long way to go, but look, you're seeing some traction, and that is extraordinarily heartening to see, and due in large part. And state lawmakers have said, and you'll see it in the reports that we produce, lawmakers have said it's because of you, many of you on this phone call, who brought the concerns to their attention, so that in a term-limited legislature, they have but 8 years, they are able to get caught up to speed and understand the gravity of the challenges so many of you are currently facing, particularly those who have been stuck on the waiting list for services that you are entitled to receive. I have already received some questions from you. Before I proceed any further, I'll repeat this at the end. Each and every one of you, all 350 plus, are invited, welcome, and encouraged to call me. I'll give you my direct phone number. If you want to jot it down now, I'll give it to you later too. It's 813-690-0353. Again, 690-0353. I'd like to get to know you, particularly if you have stories that that you think need to be told to continue to try to move the ball. Also, my email address is pretty easy to remember. It's craig.patrick@fox.com. craig.patrick@fox.com. And once more, the phone number 813-690.
It's gonna work. Go ahead and see if you can get us to hear.
53. Now, I've gone through some of the questions that some of you have asked, and I'll work through it very quickly. One of them was, how did we first learn about the challenges that so many of you are facing, particularly those who are stuck on the wait list? And for me, I came to, and by the way, quick background, I came to Tampa in 1998 and joined Fox 13 in 2004. As many of you know, it was in that period, well, we had a waiting list back then too, and there was a class action litigation. It was at that point that a former news manager named Phil Metlin brought the concern and the issues and the lawsuit to my attention and assigned me to cover it. And then, as a wise news manager would do, he assigned me to cover it again and again and again. And in doing that, I got to meet a number of families with very pressing needs. And I got to see in that phase actual progress in which, at least for a little while, the wait list got knocked down, and the class action litigation seemed to have pressed some change. And there was a former governor who also took a particular interest in the issue as well. That's how I first got plugged into this issue. It was a news manager explaining it to me, then assigning me, and then writing herd on me to continue to do it over and over again. Well, that gave me the institutional knowledge so that when the Great Recession hit and then the wait list began to accrue and grow longer and longer and longer, I had that background from years prior, and I had covered it off and on. And then this past year, we made a commitment to going back to what my former news manager pressed. You've got to stay on it with continuing coverage. And so we committed and decided to double or triple down on putting together a series of news reports, a 30-minute special, which Alan is referring to, and some segments in our political programming as well. That's how it came to my attention. You know, as a storyteller, but certainly as an investigative reporter, you were driven. And I and a lot of my colleagues and competitors, I mean, you get into this business because, as corny as it sounds, you want to make a difference. You want to go out there and do stories that mean something to the people who watch, and if not change the world, and we often or seldom do, we do give, hopefully, people the knowledge and information they need to make informed decisions and that they need to drive change. And a lot of us in the television news world and the reporting world, press world in general, I think draw inspiration, those who do investigative reporting, from one of the pioneers, Edward Murrow, who famously said, our goal is to teach and illuminate and inspire. And illuminate meaning shining light. You know, we shine the light and keep the rascals honest. And then in the course of that, hopefully teaching and educating and inspiring as well. Otherwise, he said, you just have a box. Televisions were boxes back then with lights and wires into it. That's my motivation. One of the questions that we received, as I look at the list of those who sent them prior to this meeting, when we interview people, how do we go about making them comfortable? And comfortable to the point that they're able to easily discuss their situation and feel comfortable in doing so. And I'd say we simply just get to know them as best we can on the front end through phone calls up front, maybe sharing some of the reporting that we do, some of our prior reporting as well. People don't always get comfortable. And in the end, many of them will say thanks, but no thanks, or it just doesn't work for whatever reason. But you take your best effort, and sometimes on behalf of those who step forward, it's a bit of a leap of faith and just getting to know the reporter. So, Alan, go ahead, Alan.
Can you talk about the difference between on the record, off the record, and background? Because some people may be scared to talk because they might fear retaliation. And a lot of people don't understand. I can tell you, Craig Patrick follows the rules. If he says he's off the record, he'll listen to you and talk to you, and you don't have to have fear that it's going to be in the paper.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I'm going to tell you first off what those terms generally mean. And those of us who have been working in the news media for a long time, how we define them typically. When we say something is on the record, it means that we can cite you as the person who gave us the information. Alan, for example, told me this, and here's what he said. Or Alan provided this document to it. We found out about this because he told us this. We're specifically using your name if we're recording an interview, perhaps clips of the reporting that's on the record. On background generally means that that you can report the information that somebody is giving you, but you agree not to use their name. It's reportable. You tell me something that's going on. We cite you as perhaps an unnamed source. We don't say where we're getting the information, but the person who's providing it to us agrees that we can, in fact, report it. Off the record generally means something a little different. It means that you're a source providing us information, and not only are we agreeing not to use your name or identity, we're also agreeing not to report the information unless we get it verified by a different source. So you're giving us a tip if something's off the record and we still can't report it, but we have it in the back of our minds. We know what we're looking for. We know what we know the mission at hand, and then we go about looking for sources who might be willing to go on background or on the record to give us that information. Those are the general definitions. That's generally what we talk about when we use those terms. But be careful, not everybody draws that exact delineation. And sometimes on background and off the record can be used synonymous, because one party or the other may not understand the technical definition that I just spelled out to you. And by the way, there is no official definition. Those are the terms we generally use. So when you're talking to somebody and you don't want them to report the information without getting it confirmed elsewhere, or you're okay with them reporting it but not using your name, then you need to, I would suggest that you have that conversation up front, so you're not kind of speaking in code, because not 100% of the time are people going to follow the definitions that I just gave you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. That was good.
Please, anybody jump in with any other questions as you just did.
Well, Mary Griffith just asked the question in the chat. She said, "Hi, Craig. What do you think are the most important legislative changes for best impact to home and community-based services? Do you think they require another class action lawsuit to motivate legislative action?"
It remains to be seen, doesn't it? Look, if there is movement, if we finally have the current Senate president saying that she gets it, and saying she didn't get it before, but for the work of Stephanie, but for the work of JJ and others in informing them and in teaching them. You have a governor who has increased the budget. You have House leadership who is on board. You also have not current, but incoming House Speaker who seems to be particularly tuned into the issue. And of course, Speaker Renner was as well. Keep in mind, what the movement we saw was a relative drop in the bucket. We know it's not nearly enough, and it remains to be seen whether or not it continues. And it remains to be seen whether the comparatively small percentage of people they say will get off the wait list as a result of their actions will in fact do so. All of that bears watching. Obviously, it also bears close watching in terms of how this Medicaid pilot program proceeds in Hillsborough and in South Florida too, and what lawmakers make of it. So there's much that needs to be carefully watched. Like we say, shine the light. But when you see traction, when you see progress after years of inaction, there certainly is the potential, the prospect, the hope that one small step forward, because one step tends to lead to another step. That is, if you keep if you continue to ride herd on lawmakers and make them aware of the fact that that they move the ball in the right direction, but they still have a long way to go to get to where you need. It is conceivable, and just based on the movement we saw, as small as it was this year, that in fact, that shy of litigation, the ball could continue to move in the right direction.
There was a lot of people have asked me, like they think that you have some special connection to people with intellectual developmental disabilities. Just the way you told the story from the beginning and how you brought on those individuals and brought it out of them and what was happening. Do you have a connection in your family or something that you could share? Is there something that makes this, because it was compelling, your stories that you told in the two that you series that you did?
Well, I do, but in my family, it would be out of state. And so you really have to understand that what's happening in Florida is a little different, and the challenges are a little steep. In our reporting, you'll see that that Florida's challenges are particularly acute in terms of how it serves or does not serve people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So while I could give you examples within family, I would feel more comfortable telling you, look, it was sitting down with specific families we met with in the Tampa Bay region where we work, and also beyond that. JJ comes to mind, and Allison. The Holmes family certainly comes to mind of one example of a family who we took the time to sit down with and more than just interview, but develop an understanding of the daily challenges and what it takes hour after hour, day after day, what's being sacrificed. And I can give you other examples too of families. And yeah, as a journalist, we are very touched and moved and frankly saddened by their stories. I have lost a bit of sleep along the way, knowing what these families have been going through, what they're still going through, and in forming those connections, and frankly at times getting a bit upset, definitely concerned about it. It does continue to drive you as a journalist to try to keep it top of mind, to make sure that policymakers understand what's happening, what's not happening, so that maybe they can continue to drive positive change.
I noticed Allison and JJ are on this call. There's some of the people that are on it, and so is Stephanie, who was covered in the story. There's a question from Stephanie that said, and I know she's interested in this because she was pushing, for example, the electronic application for applying. And believe me, she's all over that because, it's not about passing laws, it's about implementing them sometimes. That's the important thing. Do you have any plans for a story following up on the bills that passed this year? There are still implementations of in rules that are concerning the families. Also, will you be at the Family Cafe next weekend?
I didn't know about next weekend, but I'd like to learn about that and see if I can. If I can or can't, I definitely, and we've already had discussions with our news managers in terms of staying on top of this, with plans to do something more this fall and certainly throughout the course of the next legislative session. And I can tell you that we've had those conversations among content managers who understand the issue and are highly motivated, and that we stay on top of it and looking at the bills that passed, and in the vein of keeping them honest and in tracking progress or inaction, how do the results stand up to what they promised, and what more needs to be done? That is at the top of our agenda and the top of my to-do list, starting later this year. And that's why I gave my phone number and email, and that's a not so subtle way of me soliciting input from all of you as well. And I hope that I am able to make some more connections, and I hope that that all of you in this call may form connections not just with me, but with other reporters in your communities who either are already familiar with the issue and written about it, and that's how you find them, or maybe new to the area, but are looking for enterprise reports, meaning reports that are different than what you're going to see in other publications. They're unique. They brought them to the table. That you go out of your way and try to meet some of these journalists and make sure they understand the issue and that they have interest in covering it as well, because you have news markets spread across the state, more so than most of the nation. And so if you get traction in multiple markets, that's where you continue to get lawmakers taking notice, and that's where you continue to keep it in the conversation in the news cycle, and that's how you continue to drive the ball forward.
So Craig, I guess you're saying that if they live in, let's say, Miami, they could go to their TV station website and type in the word disability, see who's covering it, or look under investigative reports and reach out to the person through an email?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Or a phone call. It doesn't hurt. And yes, you absolutely do that, but also look for political journalists and look for investigative journalists in television and in print, in blogs as well, who, if they haven't covered it, that you might be able to tell by the range of their coverage, would be interested in covering it. I could rattle off a lot of names off the top of my head. You mentioned South Florida. Well, the Florida Bulldog comes to mind to me as an investigative organization that I've collaborated with, or reported on, I should say, in the past, that certainly takes interest and does deep dive reporting on very important issues. That's just one example. I can follow up and think of others, but you will find them with a little bit of searching, and I think that just a little bit of effort, if you reach out to people, you might be surprised in terms of how many reach back, particularly given the interest that most reporters have in unique reporting, again, what we call enterprise reporting, that you're maybe less likely to see in print or on television, but needs to be seen because it affects real people's lives, and people are struggling. Yes.
You know, families are often scared to tell their story because they're scared of retaliation. I hear that a lot. You seem to be able to get them to open up. How do you do that? What's your secret to get families to be willing to talk about the issues that are important to them?
Well, you don't always succeed. I mean, sometimes people have concerns that you don't want to that you want to be respectful of, and if they are truly concerned and have legitimate reason to think that they might face retaliation, then by all means, I would not want to contribute to that. But you know, I look at it this way, and I'll often tell people, well, you know, in the course of my career, and I've been doing this since 1993. I can't personally think of a case where anyone actually has been retaliated against for going to the news media to report that they're not receiving needed services they're eligible to receive. In other words, I've never come across personally a government entity that says, by gosh, we'll show them, and then they face repercussions for it. What typically happens is just the opposite. It's more of an, oh my goodness, we didn't realize this, or this doesn't look so good. Let's go out of our way to tend to this person and to fix this person. You know, having said that, that's been my experience 100% of the time. You know, I am aware of some cases. One that comes to mind for me, just off the top of my head, would be a VA whistleblower during the VA scandal that kicked off in 2014. You may recall, one of the whistleblowers, and this was in Pennsylvania, I believe, reported some things to the news media that showed problems in VA care and in coverage, and with for those who are for ailing vets, and some of them dying and not receiving the care they were supposed to receive. As all of that was going down, and that particular whistleblower said that he was fired for the offense of eating a day-old sandwich. You got that out of the vending machine; it expired today. You shouldn't have eaten it. You're fired. So that's a really bizarre and if true, pretty repellent situation. But it does illustrate the fact that people do have concerns, and retaliation does occur. But let's take it back to this situation. Here, we're talking not about employees. We're talking about constituents. We're talking about voters. We're talking about some of the most vulnerable people in the state, and their caregivers and their parents who are giving it everything they have and are suffering and struggling. And that's something that comes across in coverage that they receive when they tell their stories. So think about it. How likely is government to retaliate against that person versus thinking, oh my gosh, something somehow or another, this shouldn't be, let's get it fixed. In my experience, 100% of the time, and I've been doing it since 1993, the reaction has been, in that kind of a case, let's get it fixed.
Craig, I just want to mention a commercial for you. You can contact Craig at his email at craig.patrick@fox.com. You can also connect with him on Facebook and follow him on Twitter at Fox13Politics. And you can also go on his YouTube channel, Craig Patrick Money, Power, and Politics YouTube channel. You put in his name in and you'll find it. It's easy to find. And I want to take a minute before we open it up for questions to share with you what the award we got looks like. So I'm going to put it on the screen now. It says Investigative Advocacy Award, Craig Patrick, Waiting for Help, the Arc of Florida. And we really wanted to, it's real heavy too, by the way. That's how you know it's a good award. But I'm gonna come down there sometime in the next month. I might invite a couple people and we'll have lunch. And you can give us more advice. But I just wanted to let you know what your award looked like. And at this point, we're opening it up for questions. We got more in the chat, but let's open it up. If you got a question, you can unmute.
Hi, I have a question. I
Go
live
ahead.
in Spring Hill in Hernando County. We have an issue that we've been dealing with for so long here. And I understand it's legal, I get it. But with people with disabilities, with medical issues on top of it, I don't understand why they don't give a crap care about the residents that live in this apartment complex here. I have neighbors that are drug pot dealing morons that the smell comes in. We're constantly having to either spray the house with stuff to kill the smell, or we're doing like incense candles, incense sticks, you know, you name it, we do it. You know, and it makes me ill. My vertigo, my migraines, my husband's asthma bothers him. I mean, it's just a sick world that they don't care.
Yeah, that sounds horrible and it sounds disgusting. And I'm not sure if to what extent you might be able to get movement in that in conferring with a landlord. If and I would think it'd be a landlord issue, but that's a case where potentially coverage could ultimately, if you can get it from us, from somebody else, and that involves working the phones. It involves maybe having a more detailed conversation with me after the Zoom session here, which I'm happy to have. But you know, you're talking about a situation where you're affected. Maybe
Right.
not. That's not a statewide problem necessarily. I'm sure it is in pockets here and there. But you raise a very important point in that the work that Alan has been discussing and is so kindly thanking us for doing is relating to a pattern that we're seeing that is systemic in Florida, that affects a lot of people, tens of thousands of people. Now, you're giving us a situation where it's not affecting the same number of people, but if it's affecting someone in need and it's affecting them and they are suffering because of it, well, then that can be a legitimate news report as well. And I would say that, you know, we have done stories where just one person is ultimately affected by something. For example, we did somebody had his Social Security payment messed up. He was divorced and the Social Security Administration was mixed up and thought he was still married, and they cut into his check and he couldn't survive. That's just one person's problem. We went out and did a story and ultimately got it fixed. We did another story on a 2-year-old or near 2-year-old toddler who was disenrolled from Medicaid, and that's part of the bigger issue with the Medicaid unwind. Is happening for different reasons. One of them is just technical, just mistakes. She was disenrolled. She was cut off Medicaid because the state contended she was never born, and yet we can see that's logically nonsense because obviously she was born. So we did the report. We got it fixed. Those are just individual people, but those still merit important reports and coverage, and they drive positive change. my colleague who worked with me on all of these reports that you've seen in the Waiting for Help series. His name is Craig Davis, and he's actually with me today here at Kennedy Space Center covering the crewed launch of Starliner. He worked with our prior investigative reporter and investigative producer on the story of a man convicted of vehicular homicide, John Claude Muse. He was railroaded in court. They went through the effort of getting accident reconstruction experts, taking a closer look at the situation to determine, in fact, that he was railroaded in court, and as a result of their reporting, he got out of prison as a result. Those are just examples of one person that has a significant problem, and they're suffering and they're struggling. So just because it's one person, just because it's your family, and maybe this is not a statewide pattern, if you're suffering, if you're struggling, the role of journalists is also to expose problems that subject a small number of people to a problem, or sometimes just one person to a problem. If it's a mistake, a mix-up, if someone is getting ignored, or there's a serious health problem to that poses to one's health and safety, and from what you're describing, that may be happening. And I'd be happy to learn more from you in greater detail if you would like later today, or I'll be out of pocket next week or the week after. Please stay in touch with me. I can't guarantee we'll do something, but I can guarantee I'll definitely listen and see what I can do. And by the way, when we take calls like that, and if we make a determination, it's just we're not in position to cover that, I still may be in position to call somebody, be it a landlord, a management company, those calls, even if we don't do a television report. They can have a way of sometimes, not always, but sometimes resolving problems.
Okay, I know there's a lot more questions out there because I'm seeing them in the chat. Unmute and ask your question. Mike Barber, are you able to unmute?
Yes, this is Mike.
Hi there, Mike.
Hey, so I have a son that's 38 years old, and I've had to work with APD, and I was successful finally in getting him off the wait list. But my story is probably not unique in that he was close to 7,000 on the wait list. We asked for a hearing while he was denied, and we were told, basically, to make the story short, that they didn't have any money. And so when I did some investigation online and found out that they had been charged, this is when Jeb Bush was the governor, they had been charged with not using millions and millions of dollars in that calendar year. Then I wrote certified letters to the governor, to the state special needs coordinator, and all those people saying, did you perjure yourself when we had the hearing? Because, there was a court reporter. He got services in 1 week. So now I work with a support group, and I hear these stories, and even people with children that are 5 and 6 years old have already figured out that they have to be ugly and knock down doors because the website doesn't have the current employees on there. Nobody wants to deal with them. And what I notice as a parent and someone who would love to try to redo this agency is that they never go see the clients. And so I don't know how they make a determination about what they do or don't need. And then finally, there are statutes in there where you have to get a diagnosis by the time you're 18. You have to try to get services before you're 21. And the system just doesn't work. That's my concern.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Those are I think those are important concerns to relay, and I have to believe that management of ADP would want to hear that somewhere up the chain. Boy, you would be a wonderful focus group, wouldn't you? I mean, when companies do qualitative research, they bring in people, they pay good money to hear feedback like that. And that's where there's a role to play, not just in your efforts as advocates, but in our role as the news media, to be able to hear who better would have a gauge of potential solutions or improvements than those who are being overlooked. So for example, you bring up the suggestion of coming out and actually making a visit and an assessment. Why isn't that being done? Boy, when you talk about the problem, what do you need? What do you need to move it forward? You need solutions. Any good investigative report, hopefully at some point down the line in the continuing coverage, will lead in that direction, if not specific solutions, then just possible proposals that can get us there. And that's where there's a lot of synergy between the work that we do and the stories that you have to tell. And I have to believe, and I do believe, that upper management of ADP would be well served and would want to hear the very kind of concerns that you're relaying to us in this phone call.
Yeah, and Mike, if you send me an email at ceo@arcflorida.org, and any family member that wants to be heard, the Developmental Disability Council is creating some work groups. They contracted with a group called Mathematica to do some work, and I will get them your name so you can participate. The other thing is, I don't know if Stephanie can come off mute, but this I think it's a big deal, in the year that we're in, that everything should be online. You should be able to apply online. And I know Stephanie was instrumental in getting that in the legislation. I would like to know, I have a question. Stephanie, since you're the one that brought this issue up about how come we can't apply online, what do you think is a reasonable time for them to get it online now that the law is passed? And I would ask Craig after that to follow up about, when does it become a story if it's not online?
Yes,
So, Stephanie?
Craig, I'm so glad you're on this call today. It was like a ding dong. I should clue you into what we're doing as far as getting the application going. I think July 1st is implementation time, so we should already be having ideas put forth on how to roll this out. Putting a website together is, an online application with a giant state agency shouldn't be a long process. This has been a long time coming. And so I would like to see a website developed and ready for the fall, so we can show that the websites are, that we're putting action behind these bills. One of the concerns I have is we pass the laws and then there's the rulemaking process. And when it's, we're going to do this action, are we really going to do this action? I have one of the moms that I helped down here in Collier. There's a bill that passed 2 years ago to help caregivers with medically fragile children. And they still haven't made the rules so that can be made possible. And that was 2 years ago. And I'm thinking of all of the families that are desperate. And especially in my situation, I wasn't in a place where it was convenient for me to fax an application. And that happens like every day. So I did send you an email, and I did ask you to keep some of the specifics off the record. So I want to make sure I say that. But I would love to make sure that we hold accountable the laws that have passed, because really then it's just noise. I don't know for sure, but a lot of the families that have aging caregivers where the age was reduced to 60, there's no data to say what the caregivers' ages are that I understand. And I don't know if these families know that they're eligible to move up on the wait list. And those are things like I feel needs to be addressed. And I'm sure if I answered the question. I do have a kid who's on meltdown mode today, and I'm so glad I'm with 350 people who get it. Thanks, Alan.
So Craig, when does it become a story? You tell the story about all the things that's needed. The legislature does their job. When does it become another story that everything seems to have happened, yet we don't have the action that we thought we were going to get?
Well, based on what I just heard from Stephanie, sounds like fall, because she said she would expect that fall would be a reasonable time frame. And given her advocacy and work in the issue, and the fact that state lawmakers, state leadership in the legislature have drawn guidance from her specifically, I think that that fall is a reasonable time to look at a potential report from July until, I don't know when in fall. Let's say maybe late fall. But has there been digital implementation And if so, great. That's a good story to tell. Let's keep it going. If there has not, why hasn't there been? How much longer will it take to get there? That could be a story. And then, okay, we'll see what they say. And then whatever they say, February, April, May, what have you, let's take it from there. And an analogy I would draw, by the way, would be the expansion of kid care, because that was supposed to happen in January. Lo and behold, in December, we found that there had been some bureaucratic problems, to put it mildly, and then that got pushed back. When did it get pushed back? Got pushed back. Well, we ought to get it done by April. Well, there's another benchmark to do another report in April, and then along comes litigation that kind of puts things on hold. So I think Stephanie gave us a good benchmark of late fall, and I certainly think that's more than reasonable to either tell a good story or a story that's still a long way from finished, or if there's hopefully not, but if they don't move forward at all, a story that would maybe pursue some accountability on that.
I see we have a question from Thomas.
So, Craig, thank you so much for everything you've done. What would you say is the influence on process of when you're interviewing people in government for the background? Do you find that sometimes creates some momentum to say, ooh, this is becoming a story, and my reaction to an interview can have a big influence on what's going forward, perhaps motivates people to keep the ball rolling forward?
Yes, absolutely. And you might have some experience with that. That could be a rhetorical question, or you could be guessing that, in fact, discussions on background with policymakers, when you make them aware of some of the people you've been talking to and the challenges that you're finding, and then in the course of that conversation, well, when do you plan to do a report? You tell them when you plan to do a report. Things have a way of working themselves out, or at least there's some progress to report, sometimes great progress to report by the time that reporting deadline approaches. And so the report takes a significant turn before it even goes to air. That's right. And that's where there's a lot of machinations when you're interviewing affected families, and that covers a lot of different topics and issues and problems. And then you're working behind the scenes with policymakers of different types. That's where the process of reporting, of researching, of investigating can deliver results sometimes before it even airs, and sometimes can render a report unneeded. That's happened too, and things get worked out in advance. You say, okay, well, I'm so glad we don't have a story to do on this particular issue, because it all got worked out in the process of trying to figure it out.
Craig, I would say that, and we'll get to you in a second, Joy. I would say a big concern that I'm hearing from people around the state, and I give kudos to the director recently for putting 11% as a rate increase starting July. The legislature did 10%. So I think that's a big move, saying she knows that there's needs out there to expand services. So I give her credit for that. But the concern that I'm hearing is the minimum wage keeps going up $1 a year, which is good. But that means there needs to be more money for direct support professionals, because all the progress we made the last couple of years with then President Simpson putting a lot of money in the system, and even he said every year there needs to be more money. And then the Department of Labor just passed some rules requiring to pay managers overtime unless they make a certain amount of money. All of a sudden, the waiver isn't going to cover as much as it did. So that's becoming a big issue that I'm hearing from around the state is, we got a lot of momentum. We got to keep it going. How do we do that?
Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to tell everybody else, I found out about that because about 3 months ago, Alan, you gave me a deep dive education on that very issue about the impact that wages can have. And so not only did Alan just spell out the concern and the challenge that all of you need to be mindful of, but he took the time to educate me somewhat so that I understood the financial considerations too, and why your organization and others lobbied for the increase in funding, and why that funding is needed to address bottlenecks and just what could be a growing shortage of services and growing strain on coffers as well.
Well, we have two more questions because I know your time's valuable and you're traveling from one story, probably going to another story. We have Joy and then we have Damien. So Joy.
Quick question for you. I'll make this short for you. I went to two meetings for Section 8 with my parents. We took a whole folder, of all the requirements they asked for, birth certificate, to ID, to whatever that was, concerning to have. Well, my last caseworker that I had, good riddance, we got rid of her in the meantime, but she wrote down some paperwork questions that she answered them wrong, and they denied me a Section 8 twice because even though I had my license in my hand, I had my birth certificate in my hand, they denied me and said, oh, well, we can't make sure that your age is correct. We think you're 60 and not 40. And I'm like, how can you consider that I'm 60 when I'm 40?
Yeah, I know. So, that vaguely relates to the example I gave earlier of the toddler who wasn't born, and the state said, sorry, she's not born, don't know what to tell you. But look, she's walking, she's right here in the office. How is she not born? Well, sorry, ma'am, don't know what to tell you. So yes, there are issues, there are paperwork issues. One little thing, I mentioned the example earlier of the Medicaid unwinding. A lot of people are losing Medicaid, of course, because the rules changed and tightened through the pandemic. But a lot of other people are still eligible for Medicaid, but it's a technicality, it's a procedural issue. It's something akin to the very thing that you described with your Section 8 challenges, because what's happening is that they just didn't fill out a renewal form, or they didn't fill it out right, or one little box wasn't checked the right way. Maybe they didn't even get it because a lot of people will move around from place to place. Maybe it was sent the wrong place. And so that is a very real problem. It doesn't help you in me telling you that you're in good populous company, but that does happen so much more than a lot of people may realize. A 40 versus 60 kind of thing. And come on, let's work through this. And what I found, relating it back to the work that I do, what I found is that people will just hit a brick wall over and over and over again. I can go in and get it fixed, and I'm not working any magic. I'm doing the exact same thing they did. That's my daughter teases me, Dad, you didn't do anything special. You don't have any special insider knowledge. You just have a position and a title that they listen to you more than they listen to these other people. And she's absolutely right. Sometimes we step in, we say the exact same thing. We say, look, can't you tell it's 40 versus 60? Come on, this is a paperwork glitch. You can't get this worked out. And sometimes, in fact, a lot of times we've seen that somehow when we call, when we email, somehow or another it gets a little more heightened attention and things have a way of getting fixed, or at least people who have been hitting their head against a wall for a couple of years tell us that. So that's the sort of thing where, again, you others are welcome to reach out to me and see what we can do if we can. But that's where just persistence, it's not, it doesn't seem right. Persistence can move the ball. And if through your own persistence, you can't, sometimes a little help and somebody doing nothing any more special than you've been doing, just the extra phone calls and attention can sometimes help as well.
Craig, we got a lot of people that still want to talk, but I'm gonna limit it to 3 more people. Damien's gonna ask a question. Amanda's got a question, and then Mark's got a comment. So Damien,
right,
if you can unmute. He's got his hand up. Damien, can you press unmute? Well, we can go to Amanda. Amanda, are you there?
I am here. I had more of a statement. I didn't know if you were going to mention the group or not, but just a quick plug for anyone wanting to get more active in advocating to the legislators. I'm going to share the the link for the We the People, by the People, for all the people advocacy group in the chat. And basically all we do is we talk to our legislators and share our stories, because if they don't know, they don't know. And that's how we talk to them. So
And they
that's
are,
all.
thank you, I appreciate that. And they are one of our they are the one advocacy group member of the ARC of Florida that we don't charge. Because they're all families. So Amanda, we appreciate that. And those that had it started. Gregory, another chance before we go to Mark. Can you figure out how to get your mute off?
Yes, I think I did. Did I? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Craig, I have a question, because this issue of the waiver, as so many other issues, have been so frustrating for so many years. So I wanted to get a little inside baseball and find out why you think it is that your colleagues in the media have not bought into this story. I mean, everybody, the crisis of the waiver has been an ongoing story for many, many years. It's not a secret, yet the coverage of it just kind of seems to fall flat. What is it that isn't breaking through to get some buy-in?
Yeah, I think it's similar to the challenge you have with the state legislature, and that may be a lack of institutional knowledge. A lot of people may not know. A lot of people who get elected to the legislature may run on other issues and just not be very well informed, not have a deep dive understanding of the issue, and that may be why they don't move forward on it more. Likewise, a lot of journalists may be focusing on other beats, other things. They may have other issues that they have reported on, or have specific coverage areas, be they geographic or by issue, so they don't necessarily become fully aware of the issue. I'm confident in thinking that those who do, those who understand the long-running problems, the long-running crisis going back decades, how it accelerated in recent years, I think that I have to believe and know that a lot of journalists are not jumping on that because they just aren't fully briefed, don't fully know, haven't seen those who are deeply affected, and how it is draining them financially and physically and emotionally. And if they did, and that takes that takes the work of the 350 plus of you in this call and others. I think that you will find that that there would be far more interest in the among the news media. And just as you've seen, there was more interest this past year in the state legislature. Again, incremental and small in the scheme of things, but let's look at the direction of things positive nonetheless. And I think you would see positive movement, especially with all of you spread out across the markets in Florida. If you took the time to some of these reporters and sit down and share some of the reporting that that not just me but others have done too in years past, so that they can understand that there is a wealth of information that they can report in a serious crisis in their own community that they could start, by gosh, with you.
Does it not though? I'm sorry, I have to ask a follow-up. Does it not speak though to the lack of respect for people with disabilities just generally? And not to throw you under the bus, certainly not, but it just seems like we're marginalized and we're just not a part of the conversation. We not only have these stories, we have thousands of other stories that are just not being told at all.
Yeah. I hope not. I'm fallible. I could be wrong, but
Craig, you're breaking up a little.
And it's my belief that it's not lack of respect, rather a lack of I was going to say with information comes knowledge in doing in telling your stories. I just do. I have to believe that, and I suspect that with additional outreach, you will find many others of who are like-minded in our line of work.
And I think if Disability Rights Florida was here, they would tell people to vote, and that's an important thing too. And people with disabilities, intellectual developmental disabilities, can vote also, unless their rights were taken away. And now with the new supported decision making, they may be more and more people will be able to vote as we hopefully take less people's rights away. Mark, you're on. You want to give a last comment?
Yeah, this is Mark Swain, and I have the pleasure and the honor of being the board chair of the ARC of Florida. And I just wanted to give a shout out to this entire group. We are absolutely gaining traction. We are gaining traction big time. I wanted to give a shout out to Stephanie. The electronic application will bring so much accountability to the system in so many different ways, including how many people are applying, where they can apply, increase the numbers, and also, if it's done right, to show that all the proper documentation has been turned in and submitted. And lastly, I want to thank Craig Patrick for the best investigative reporting in the history of this system in Florida. He's done a great service to us and a great service to people with developmental disabilities. I want to thank him for helping us gain the traction that's currently happening. Thank you.
And I'm going to give you the last word, Craig, because we're out of time. We want to respect people's time. So you have the last word. I just want to say I appreciate you. I'm going to come down there and take you to lunch in the next month, and just really appreciate what you did for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families.
Well, I am so extraordinarily grateful and so flattered, and it was part of a team. My partner I work with every day, Craig Davis, who is with me right now, was side by side with me in putting all these together. Our executive producer of special projects, Cheryl Brisky, our assistant news director, Scott Jones, our vice president of news, John Hoffman, all are in lockstep in terms of cover the plight, the crisis, and your stories. And you mentioned, Alan, that time ran short on some who wanted to ask questions. Well, I am serious about this. It just so happens that I am going to be off work and traveling by myself tomorrow. I'll have a lot of downtime in the car. So during the day, if any of you wish to email me now, make sure you provide a phone number. I can go hands-free, and I will gladly take phone calls and talk with you in the course of what I'm expecting to be an 8-hour car ride tomorrow by myself. So I've got downtime tomorrow. I would love to hear any of the questions that any of you may have, and you can reach out to me again. My email is craig.patrick, that's CRAIG, .PATRICK @Fox, that's FOX, @fox.com. Email me and provide a phone number. And what I'll do before I leave tomorrow morning, I'll anyone who reaches out to me, I'll make a list of phone numbers and names, and then I'll work down the list as I'm driving hands-free tomorrow.
This presentation will be posted on the ARC of Florida YouTube channel in the next couple days. And thank you for everyone to participate and ask questions.